The bodybuilder at its root is concerned with self-development through self-mastery.
Everybody's on steroids. Everybody.
Look at the guys in the Olympia stage, and you're hitting a pose, and then you're like...
When it comes to talking about what choice should be made, is that unenhanced bodybuilding is the way to go.
This is time right now for natural bodybuilding to grow, where everybody's seeing that health is the most important thing.
So, what's your personal definition of bodybuilding?
I look at bodybuilding as, you know, you become an artist, I think. I think a lot of people transform themselves by looking in the mirror and they see what ultimately they can achieve. They chisel their bodies to be their absolute best. So bodybuilding has a lot of meanings. I mean, I would consider a bodybuilder an artist, but I would also consider someone that goes in the gym and builds their body to look like a superhero. I mean, bodybuilding is, you know, is a vague term because I think anyone that lifts weights, you can necessarily call them a bodybuilder because they're building their body in the gym through nutrition, training, whatever it may be. But the focus is dedicating a certain timeline to building a physique that is what people in their minds consider in shape or muscular or defined. And I think everyone wants to look like an athlete and look like they have some sort of muscle tone. So I think that's what bodybuilding would necessarily be. But if you really think deep into that, it would be a type of artist would actually do that. You know, you're creating a vision of something that, you know, you consider the ultimate. And people craft their bodies to be what their ultimate look is set out to be.
How would you describe it to like someone who doesn't really know anything about bodybuilding? They ask you, you know, what bodybuilding is.
I would say it's a hobby. It's time each day and a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. I mean, there's nothing more to it really. I mean, it's about hitting the gym and working out to build your body beyond what the norm is. I mean, I think the normal person may have no muscle tone, certain amount of body fat, where I think a bodybuilder, whether it's a male, female, wants to develop their physique to look athletic, to look muscular, to look lean, to have cuts between the muscles or carry a certain amount of size and balance between the body parts. Whether it be a wider back and a smaller waist and a flare to the legs, everyone wants to have some sort of muscle structure to their body.
Would you consider bodybuilding a sport? And when I say a sport, I mean, all right, because, you know, you never hear someone says, let's go play bodybuilding, right? Nobody uses that term. Like you say, let's go play football, let's go play baseball. You know, those are sports. From your experience and just being a part of the industry in bodybuilding and someone who's compete, do you think it's a sport?
I think it's a sport because it involves physical activity and you are competing for something and you win prize money, you win trophies. You're still judged. And I think anything that's judged and is physical can be called a sport. I mean, you could sit there and say, well, I'm going to play cards. Is that a sport? I mean, that's a common question, but you're sitting there just, you know, using your mind more than your physique. Whereas bodybuilding or fitness competition, I mean, you train, you diet, you have activity through the day, whether it be cardio training, weight training, and you have an ultimate goal to stand on a stage, which you're judged competitively. There's first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth, so I would have to call it a sport. I mean, it's competition. People call it a pageant, but there's a lot of terms to it, and I believe anything that's judged and is physical, and you win something, meaning you're judged first, second, third, fourth, whatever it is, that's considered a sport.
What are your general thoughts on competitive bodybuilding in the past 2 years?
Competitive bodybuilding, I mean, like I said, it's kind of a vague thing because I focus on what I see on the amateurs and on the professional levels, and we have new divisions that came about. So I think Whereas when I started over 20 years ago, you had either the male bodybuilding side or the women bodybuilding side. There were no other categories. Nowadays, you have classic, you have bikini, you have men's physique, you have women's physique. I mean, the women's bodybuilding has now kind of passed on a little bit, but you have a greater advantage no matter what your structure, height, weight ratios are. You're not held to being underdeveloped. You still have to have decent conditioning, but each division has their own strong points of what their ultimate look actually is. And I think it's progressed a lot, but it's also hurt the mass of professional bodybuilding and even bodybuilding at the amateur level, where people aren't choosing the route of bodybuilding as much. People aren't choosing the route I took 25 years ago to become the best, bodybuilder on the planet, Mr. Olympia. People would rather take the lower weight divisions, lower physique competitions, meaning more streamlined, less mass, and pursue those categories rather than the ultimate level of balance, conditioning, size, which is male bodybuilding.
Now, based on your experience and your history, right, when you used to compete, how do you see bodybuilding and its progression since your time to now?
Bodybuilding now versus old, it's definitely changed a lot. When I was up and coming, there was golden eras that were known. I mean, we talked about the Arnold days, and then we went into the 90s where it was like Rich Gaspari, Lee Haney, and Mike Christian. Haney retired, Dorian Yates took over as Mr. Olympia, and that was what I consider the time where I started kind of following it. I followed at the tail end of the Haney era. He retired in 91. And then Dorian Yates took over from 92 to 2000, to 98. He was pretty much champ. He retired in 98, and of course Ronnie Coleman won from there, and then I picked up battling him. So I've seen bodybuilding at its biggest, and I feel that this day and age, people have a different route to take. The social aspect came into it. I think social media has changed now. You don't have to have the accolades to be famous on a bodybuilding stage. And I think it's affected the level of competition. I feel that the level has definitely swung. Well, you have some guys that definitely could hold weight against the older generation. But at the same time, we don't see as much deep talent, especially at the professional level that we saw. I mean, it's not as deep as it was where you had so many guys that could be right there winning. This year, Mr. Olympia 2018, I mean, you have I believe the top three guys are pretty much there, and then the rest of the field, it's, pretty much open from there. But, who's kind of being that top seven. There's not a lot of guys that really have the chance to really break through and push those top spots. So I feel like it has fallen off a little bit just because there's more opportunity for any of these athletes to switch over divisions and maybe not focus on the bigger stuff, which is, the men's open.